Our 8th 1-0 defeat of the season came against West Ham at the London Stadium. Glenn, another poor game and a disappointing result. Once more, we're talking about a 1-0 defeat. Were we wrong to expect anything better this afternoon?
Probably, but you do, don't you? You know, you have a couple of weeks away, and you look at the 10 games left, and think that we're going to do something different. We're going to contribute something. We're actually going to try and score some goals, and maybe even win a game. You're hoping that the penny is going to drop, that we're in serious stuff now, and we need to start picking up points. What you didn't expect was yet another insipid nothing performance where we didn't do a thing really. And the sad thing is that from the moment the team news dropped at 1 o'clock, you kind of knew that was coming. Kind of knew that we weren't going to really come flying out the traps or anything like that. We picked a front four with 0 goals in it, basically. I think the three of us have only scored 2 goals less than that front four has this season. So you knew. I know the players who aren't playing haven't scored many goals either, but it was just, you try not to be too negative when you see the team line up and just go, okay, let's see what happens. Maybe there's something different going to happen, but nothing did. You know, we picked a team to be solid out of possession, and basically we were in the first half, and the first 20 minutes was going okay. We were restricting West Ham to nothing really, and the crowd was beginning to turn on them. And then Paul Tierney steps in with the first of many dubious decisions. I mean, everyone seemed to be slating Chileta for the challenge on Bowen, but in my opinion, that free kick should have been the other way. Bowen actually kicks him. But having said that, we've given away the free kick. You've got to defend it, and we of course didn't. It was lack of marking. We just, our standard thing was just stand there hoping for an offside. It wasn't offside. Why on earth it took 4 minutes to get to that decision, don't really know. Be guessing. And 1-0 down. And another thing I can't, he scored with a header from 20 yards, and Bazunu looked like a 6-year-old in goal. He was nowhere near it. I mean, maybe that's harsh, but there's just like no presence there, and it just sort of floated into the net, and there you go. We woke up, had the shot from Perro virtually straight away. First half, just remainder of it fizzled out. Second half started, no changes, nothing. I mean, the first change left Theo Walcott playing as a number 9, so it's just him and Alcaraz up front. So we've got 2 midfielders up front. So that was strange, and it was only when Sulemana had decent initial impact. It was only when Onuachu came on, and I mean he didn't do much, but he at least got that header on target, and we looked like we had a bit of an attacking plan then. We worked the crossing position for Prowse, put it in the mix, and this is what we've been saying all along. You've got to use Onuachu the right way. Use him for what he's good at. But it was just not enough, and it's just another pathetic shambles of a display, really, which in the situation we're in, you just can't afford to have. And we've had it so many times this season, so many times. I mean, did anyone expect us to score in the second half? I didn't, because you've seen how insipid it is from the start, and it's just, if you start games so slowly in an attacking sense, it's very, very difficult to suddenly, even when you bring new players on, it's very, very difficult to just go, right, we're now going to switch and we're now going to try and batter the opposition goal. But just not enough for me. Deserve to lose, really. Just, West Ham didn't even have to be that good. They didn't have to do much. Just win the free kick and wait for us to, implode again. And that's what we did. So, I mean, the biggest cheer I had all game was Brendan Rodgers getting sacked halfway through the first half.
the breaking news that came up, yeah.
That was it. That was great. It's the biggest cheer of the first half.
Funnily enough, you were the first person that I thought of when the breaking news bar came up with that one.
Yeah, I've had a few messages.
A couple of messages already. Nick saying Saints just not fit for purpose in the Premier League this year. And Will, who's watching on YouTube, says Steve looks like a vicar tonight. I appreciate that's not going to translate particularly well into those that are listening to the podcast or on the radio. radio. But can you just confirm, Steve, you've not been at church today? You
No,
were
it's
at
a
the
zip.
game, weren't you?
It's a zip.
right.
There we go.
There's not a dog collar underneath.
No.
Okay. You were there today. It all seemed pretty flat and pedestrian. Watching on the telly, what did you make of the game?
Flat on the pitch, flat in the stands. It was a baffling. It was a weird game, weird atmosphere. Nobody seemed interested either on or off the pitch. It was just bizarre, given the supposedly high stakes. West Ham were awful. Didn't really do a whole lot the whole game. I mean, when they brought Antonio on for Ings, they went from having 10 men on the pitch to 11. And yet, yeah, we just never quite did enough. Like we were neat and tidy in the first half, and we were executing kind of what did really look like our plan of keep it tight first half, and then probably go a bit more attack minded to win it in the second. And that was kind of working up until that free kick was given. You could see that the West Ham fans were getting on the team's back. They were getting fed up of us pushing them back and forcing passes back to Fabianski all the time, and yeah, we were kind of relatively in control at that point. And then we get that free kick, which, yeah, I mean, from our end, it did look like Bowen basically missed the ball and just went through on Chaleta Sarr rather than the other way round. But when Bowen's the guy who ends up on the deck, no huge surprise that Paul Tierney gives a decision his way. But yeah, that free kick, we got to defend better. But I guess it's kind of, I mean, this kind of feels like the fine margins payback from 2 or 3 years ago, where we were absolutely superb at defending those sort of the offside lines and playing the offside trap, and every single marginal one, like during the COVID seasons, basically went our way because we'd worked so hard on it and we timed it brilliantly. This one, we've got it ever so slightly wrong, and we've paid the price for it. Because once they go 1-0, it's Moyes' ball, isn't it? You can West Ham are quite happy to sit back and soak it up, knowing that we were basically playing in front of them rather than trying to get them to turn and run back towards their own goal. And then they could look to hit us on the break, and they had a couple of decent chances on the break, but I mean, there was one first half where El Yunusi covered really well. Had to sprint about 60 yards to stay up with play, and did superbly there, I thought. But from an attacking sense, it just wasn't quite clicking, and it was all really pedestrian. Stu Armstrong, as you occasionally want to do, just kind of almost seemed to be playing in reverse gear. It was very strange that he worked himself into some really good positions, and then would suddenly find that he'd gone into a worse position, sort of within like a fraction of a second or so. And then he'd try and lay the ball off, and he'd misplace a pass, or it would be woefully under hit, and we'd give the ball away. So that was infuriating.
Stu Armstrong's an interesting one, though, because time was the team only won when he was playing, when he was starting, and he would be one of the first names on the team sheet. But it just seems to me, I don't quite know what's going on, whether it's been the injuries, but he's just not the player he was, and he was almost a liability today.
Yeah, I mean, first game back after the international break, where he's obviously been away. I mean, and we've seen this a lot, haven't we, over his time with us, where he goes away for Scotland, regardless of whether he actually gets any minutes for them. He seems to come back looking unfit. Whether that's because the training that Steve Clarke's putting them through up there is particularly intensive, or whether it was just a kind of overall thing from the minutes he did play, I don't know. But yeah, he looked so far off the pace. But I mean, you would assume that he'd looked all right in training during the week, because you would imagine obviously he'd have only been back Wednesday, Thursday, I guess. But they'd have surely worked on the team system in those last couple of training sessions, and for him to have slotted in into the starting lineup rather than someone like, say, Sulemana, he must have shown that he was up to speed and ready to go. But I mean, from what we all saw in those 90 minutes, he was nowhere near it.
We'll talk about the formation a little bit later, because I think there's a lot to get into around that and the fact that it's really not working. Just on the goal, Glenn, I mean, that's 12 goals conceded from set pieces now. It's every time they come out and say, we need to learn from this, we need to work on it, we need to get better at defending. And yet every time you can see it coming a mile away.
Yeah, I mean, we say that a lot. We've got to learn from things. We've got to learn from conceding goals from set pieces. We've got to learn from starting games slowly. We took, everyone talks, no one actually does anything. I mean, what was that stat again? 12.
I think it's 12 goals conceded from set pieces. Yeah, I think one team in the league, from what I remember, were worse than us, and that's Bournemouth.
Yeah, I mean, and we nearly let in one at the end as well, didn't we? From someone got free at the back post, standard sort of thing that we do. Was it Zuma headed over the bar? Someone did anyway. But yeah, it's like a bomb going off. It doesn't matter which centre halves we've got playing, or who's on the pitch anywhere. It just seems to be we have no idea what to do. And considering we've got a dedicated set piece coach, haven't we?
Yeah.
I mean, is there any
it's a parody role at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah. Is there any accountability for these guys? I'm sure I'd get sacked if I was that bad at my job. But
it's not as if we're scoring from set pieces either, is it?
No. And we've got one of the best set piece deliverers around, but we don't look a threat up that end quite often, very often rather. And yeah, it's just terrible. We seem to be over reliant on sort of like blocking players and looking for offsides. This is something that came in with Ralph, as Steve was saying earlier on, with the COVID games. He seemed to use that period to get us very well organised and very well drilled. Now, during the 4 minutes when they were trying to work out whether it was offside or not, they sort of like put a couple of stills up on the screen, and you could see that virtually all the Saints players had held their position, but Sekou Mara had just moved back a little bit. And obviously I'm not panning Sekou Mara for that, but no. He's a player who's not been in the team that often, so he's probably not as well drilled with it. He took a step back with, I think it was Soucek who was behind him, and that's what played a Gerd onside in front of him. And like I say, I can't work out why it took 4 minutes, because it looked very obvious that it was a perfectly okay goal. But I still think there's a lot to be said from actually your big guys marking their big guys and trying to win the headers. But there you go. What do I know? The modern way is not to do that. There's other teams that are very, very bad at it as well. I mean, Leicester, our mate Brendan Rodgers, they've been very bad at it for a couple of seasons now. And as Steve said, we've been decent at defending sort of set pieces and whatnot, and then suddenly it's just completely gone. And unfortunately it's too easy. The other team isn't having to work hard to score a goal. You think about it today, West Ham didn't get an hour half for the first 25 minutes. They get a dubiously won free kick. It's thrown in from 45 yards away, 40 yards away, whatever.
Yeah, it was almost on halfway, that, wasn't it?
Yeah, and it's just, they haven't had to work hard for that, have they? Let's face it. And it's for a team that scores as few as we do, to give away soft goals like that, it's just going to kill you.
It's going to cost us. Steve, we looked much better when Alcaraz and Sulemara came on. Were you surprised he didn't change it up at half time and maybe start that second half with a bit of momentum and a bit of energy? It's an odd 5 or 6 minutes into the second half. Seems like an odd time to then make your subs and roll the dice when you could have done it earlier.
Yeah, I mean, you blow one of your 3 opportunities for making a sub as well, don't you, by waiting? But I mean, it's a time old thing, isn't it? Manager goes into the dressing room, not happy with what he's seen. Right, lads, you've got 10-15 minutes to put it right, or otherwise someone else is coming on. That's that's traditionally how most managers operate. There are very few managers that actually take that really decisive action of making changes either at halftime or even in the first half when it's just patently not working. And yeah, I think, I mean, arguably Sellers could have been braver and do it at half time, but actually, I mean, he's left it 7 or 8 minutes. It's very early in the second half. We've made those first 2 changes. I'm not sure those 7 or 8 minutes made a tangible difference or would have done sort of to the way the second half panned out. I thought second half we were kind of fine. We certainly looked, once those subs were made, we looked a lot more sharp between the lines. Alcaraz's runs were very good. Walcott was making more runs and therefore giving players more options. And obviously Sulemana was starting to actually run at the fullback, which then gave Perraud the overlap. And all of a sudden we were starting to cause some problems. But again, we didn't get the ball into the box enough. Yeah, we had probably 3 crosses into the box in that second half that were vaguely sort of any quality in terms of whereabouts into the box they were put into. One of them we've hit the bar from, and yeah, it's just frustrating. I mean, we've given Onuachu probably 4 crosses into the box, targeted him with 4 crosses since he joined at the end of January, and we're now in April. And the guy's 6'7", and you can see the 2 headers that he's won in the penalty area. One against Chelsea, nearly scored. One today where he's come 2 inches from scoring. And those are the fine margins that we always talk about. That's why the big money players get the big money, and that's the difference. And we're just the wrong side of that line at the moment. It's frustrating. And especially so when you consider how, I mean, this doesn't obviously reflects very, very badly on Spurs 2 weeks ago, but we looked like we could score plenty in that game, and obviously scoring 3. I mean, we'd not done that for more than a year. So we looked a lot more potent in that game when the game was a little bit, obviously a little bit more open. Spurs were quite happy to play that way. West Ham don't, and which is probably why, with the players that they've got, it's probably why they're still down there struggling a little bit. But yeah, we've just got to find a way to kind of force the percentages back in our favour, really. Because I mean, let's be honest, West Ham have probably had 3 chances today, and in most games at pretty much any level, if you come off the pitch and you've restricted the opposition to 3 or 4 vaguely presentable chances, then you're probably quite satisfied with that, especially if you're a team in the bottom half of the table.
We're still in the games, aren't we?
Yeah,
and that's the thing, with like 60, 70 minutes on the clock, we're still in the games, and that's something which we weren't before. We've not always been able to say that.
Yeah, but you then rely on the guys at the other end of the pitch being a little bit clinical as well, and that's ultimately where we've fallen short, basically since kind of March last year. So it's not a new problem. It's a problem that 3 managers have struggled to solve now. And yeah, I mean, I think you kind of look throughout the league, and there's a real dearth of sort of potent strike forces these days. It's only really the sort of big clubs who can afford to splash 50-60 million pound on a single player, because you're then theoretically buying a guarantee, really. Whereas at our level, you're always taking a bit of a punt and hoping that the player fits into the system. And I think Onuachu doesn't really fit the overall style that we're looking to play. But maybe he's the guy that's probably going to have the best chance of success in front of goal going forwards. I don't know.
So let's just get into that for a little bit, and I'll be interested to get people's comments if they're watching tonight. I mean, Steve mentioned Onuachu there. We have 1 decent ball into the box. He hits the bar. Is that going to be the key to scoring some goals going forward? There's a couple of things at play. We're not scoring goals. We paid money for a striker, and we don't start him. We don't bring him on when we need him. We bring him on final throw of the dice. So, Glenn, is it back to the fact that the 4-2-2-2 isn't working? It didn't work for Ralph. It clearly isn't working. It's why we're in the mess that we're in. We're too narrow when we play it. We haven't got the players to play it. The number 10s aren't there. Is sticking to the playbook and going back to these habits that Sellers has been talking about, is that going to be the downfall? And do we need to change things up for these last, was it 9 games now?
Yeah, of course we do. But will we? You know, I don't see anything to suggest that we will. When are they going to wake up? When's the first team manager and the coaching staff and the players, when are they going to wake up? What we're doing ain't working. It isn't working. We go into all these games against middling to poor teams and we do nothing. It's just not good enough. I mean, talk about Ruben Sellers. Apart from being better than Nathan Jones, what is he adding at the moment? We've just gone back to Ralph's tactics, and Ralph got sacked for a reason, and I'm very much of the opinion that Ralph needed to go, but I don't get what Ruben Sellers is actually adding at the moment. We're just trying to play the same way that Ralph set up. We might as well have kept him if we were going to, if to be a good manager for Saints, you've got to add something to make us better than the sum of the parts, because we're never going to have great players. That's just a fact of life. You've got to add something. You've got to have something that makes us better. Sellers has waited a long time for his chance, as he keeps on saying. He's got to put his mark on it. He's got to try and actually do something different. And even if it's, okay, we'll try and get wide. We'll put 2 wingers really wide and try and get crosses into the box. For a big guy up front, if that's what it takes, but do something different, because doing the same thing over again is definition of madness stuff. We've lost. Sellers has been in the dugout for every one of these abysmal 1-0 defeats that we've had. Every single one, he's been in the dugout, and he's probably analysed every single game afterwards in his role as assistant manager, first team coach, and now the manager. So why are we doing the same things over and over again? It drives me mental. So you keep thinking. I mean, I thought, we've had a habit over the last few years. International break, we've come back with a bit of impetus, new ideas, and we've done something different. But I didn't see anything today.
No,
didn't see anything today that was any different to the dismal defeat we had at Aston Villa, the dismal defeat we had at Crystal Palace, dismal defeat we had at home to whoever it was, Everton. It's 9 games left. 2 of them are against City and Arsenal.
Yeah.
It was, West Ham away is not an easy game, but it's easier than Arsenal and
yeah, we wanted to see a better performance, didn't we? We needed more than 3 shots on target.
Yeah. And so, we do have to do something different. Now, you see when, I agree with Steve that the tactic or the game plan for today was obviously keep it tight, then chuck Sulemana on, and then whoever, and then try and win the game in the second half. Put them on from the start. Let's go for it from the first whistle. Not hope that we're still in the game 65 minutes. We've done it. We've tried that so many times. It doesn't work. We're not good enough because we're not good enough defensively to cough something up. And once we're behind, especially as Steve said, against a team like West Ham, who are perfectly happy with David Moyes to stick 10 men behind the ball and say, "Go on then." I felt like we could have had 99% possession today, and we still wouldn't have done anything with it. And it's all very well. It was what Thomas Frank said about us last week, didn't it? Or a couple of weeks ago, didn't he? He said, Saints are probably the better side up until the penalty area.
Yeah.
And we all know it. Managers who don't watch us every
we've been saying it every week, haven't we?
Every week, and so when are we going to do it? It's it ain't no good waiting until there's 3 games to go, because we'll be gone by then.
Yeah.
No matter, even with the league being as sort of messed up as it is this season, with all these poor teams in the bottom half, there's going to come a point where we're going to be 6-7 points adrift. If we
I thought
carry on.
It was interesting. I heard Prowse being interviewed afterwards, and I don't know the exact quote because I haven't got it in front of me, but it was something like he felt like it was okay because we stuck to the game plan. He said, for a large chunks of the game, we stuck to the game plan, and then you kind of think, well, maybe that is what the problem is, and that's what needs to change. And Steve, is it more about finding a system that can fit Alcaraz and Sulemana and Onanachu from the start? Because it seems to me like when we're playing 4-2-2-2, there's the number 10s are okay, the midfield is all right, but perhaps we haven't got those strikers. And then when you bring in the strikers, they're not as good in that system. So maybe it needs to be 4-3-3 and just need to find a way of getting balls into the box.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say certainly the first two of those, getting Sulemana and Alcaraz into the side, because Alcaraz technically is an excellent.
Are you surprised he didn't start today? Or is that the system again? He doesn't fit in the 4. He's not a great 10.
Yeah, possibly. I mean, it depends on. I mean, we've kind of flicked, haven't we, a little bit between the 4-3-3 and the 4-2-2-2, quite a fair bit in the sort of since Sellers took over, and you can kind of see him. He can fit into both, I think, because I mean, as we saw today when he came on, he went up front.
And he played off the right hand. He played off the right hand side in Argentina as well.
Yeah, so he's clearly got the capability to play in a variety of these sort of either central or sort of attacking roles. So, and we've seen the technical ability he's got. He can spot a pass. He's very good in tight spaces. Isn't afraid to take the ball into feet despite having players around him. And yeah, he's clearly got something about him. Sulemana is basically our one kind of wild card in terms of raw pace. Walcott's got it in little bursts, but he's 34 years old. It's not going to be I don't think it's going to be too much of a surprise to defenders when Theo Walcott's kind of running off the shoulder. Whereas Sulemana, at his age and with his sort of little explosive, little shifts of the body, move the ball to one side and go. He's just got that little X factor, which I think is going to be really important for us down this closing stretch. I think if anyone is going to kind of drag us kicking and screaming somehow above that dotted line, I actually think it's going to be him. He's the guy that's got that little something that nobody else in the team really has.
Personally, I'd like to see a Dozy come back at least into the squad. Because he's another one that can do something in terms of beating a player one-on-one. Because I mean, you mentioned Walcott there. Walcott's played really well, but his pace is such that he can't do it on his own now. And you can't just play it over the top like you could when he played for Arsenal.
And he was signed as an impact sub, wasn't he? He was never signed to be a starter that was going to try and drag us out of trouble.
Yeah.